It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. The press secretary to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex describes the moment the couple were pursued by paparazzi in New York after they said they were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase.
I would find it hard to believe that there was a 2-hour high-speed chase. But if it's 10 minutes, a 10-minute chase is extremely dangerous in New York City.
Also tonight, the founder of the collapsed company, British Volt, tells Sky News Britain has lost its opportunity for a battery industry and says the Prime Minister is to blame.
We already are behind East Asia. We're already behind continental Europe. UK, unfortunately, has lost out or is losing out.
Heavy rainfall and deadly floods hit Italy as climate scientists warn that the global temperature will likely reach 1.5 degrees of warming by 2027. One baby formula manufacturer admits the industry needs to do more after Sky News revealed desperate families were stealing to feed infants. The government unveils its renting reforms, including a ban on no-fault evictions. Critics say it will drive landlords out of the sector. And Manchester City on track to win the Champions League for the first time, making it through to the final after a 4-0 win over Real Madrid. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have long had a strained relationship with the press, and now they say that they were pursued for 2 hours by paparazzi in a near-catastrophic car chase in New York City, seeking help from local police, even switching cars to evade the cameras. Well, the New York Police Department says that the situation, which happened following an event last night, was challenging, but there were no reported collisions, injuries or arrests. Our US correspondent Mark Stone reports now from New York, a warning his report contains flash photography throughout.
The couple had left the Manhattan Awards ceremony at just before 10 p.m. The flashes and the clicks, an indication of the intense focus on them, even at this side door from the venue. With their own private security, they left with Meghan's mother in a black 4x4, no police escort, and that, they say, is when the pursuit began.
From here, they'd planned to drive north to stay at a friend's house on the Upper East Side, but they say they were chased in what they called a relentless pursuit. There were near misses with other cars, with pedestrians, and with 2 police officers. The spokesman for the couple has said to me that 12 photographers were chasing them and that it left them, in her words, incredibly scared and shaken up.
The couple's public statement said it was a near-catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. While being a public figure comes with a level of interest from the public, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Dissemination of these images, given the way in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved. It was dark when they drove through the streets. A few routes were made in an attempt to lose the tail. The couple did not want their destination, their friend's home, to be revealed.
3 times they came to this police station in an attempt to lose the photographers. At one stage they left in a yellow cab, and we've seen the paparazzi images from that taxi, Prince Harry filming them as they snapped him.
Well, they look nervous. I mean, I think they were being chased the whole day or something, so they were pretty nervous, you know. But the security guard, he was on it.
And what do you think about the description of this, you know, the near catastrophic event?
Oh, I don't think that's true. I think that's all, you know, exaggerated and stuff.
At around 10 p.m, Harry and Meghan left the Ziegfeld ballroom with private security, heading towards where they were staying on the Upper East Side. They were then driven across 57th Street, up and down FDR Drive and other streets for about an hour and 15 minutes. Sky News understands the couple entered the 19th Precinct police station 3 times. On the third occasion, they stayed for about 15 minutes. Police helped them into a different car and then on to their residence on the Upper East Side without being followed. The city's mayor described it all as reckless and irresponsible, but he countered any suggestion of a high-speed pursuit.
I would find it hard to believe that there was a 2-hour high-speed chase. That would be, I find it hard to believe, but we will find out the exact duration of it. But if it's 10 minutes, a 10-minute chase is extremely dangerous in New York City.
The New York Police Department characterized it not as a chase, but did say they were being followed. It's clear, though, that the couple see direct parallels with Paris, August 1997, and the chase which killed Harry's mother and shifted the course of his life.
My biggest concern was history repeating itself, and I've said that before, on numerous occasions very publicly.
We know from his book and the Netflix series that he is used to pursuit, but the Sussexes claim that this was of a different order and comes as the prince heads into an almighty court battle with the British press over privacy. Mark Stone, Sky News in New York.
Well, Mark joins us live now from New York. Also with us tonight is our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock. Mark, to you first. There seems to be some variance in the accounts as to what actually happened. You've been speaking, though, to an insider close to the couple.
Yes, I had 15 minutes on the phone a couple of hours ago with the Sussexes spokesperson who has been with them in New York today. And it was very interesting. It gave a clear account from their point of view of what happened. Clearly, they are aware that there is some dispute over this idea of a 2-hour high-speed chase. What she was clear to me was that there were moments when this was a stationary pursuit, in the sense that they were not driving at speed for 2 hours around New York City, but there were moments where they needed to drive very fast. There were moments where they were stationary, where their security, one of whom used to work for the US president and indeed for the Metropolitan Police, got out of the car and tried to reason with the photographers before the pursuit then took place again. She gave us, the spokesperson gave us a statement. I'll read it to you. She says, "I have never experienced their vulnerability as much as I did last night. They were incredibly scared and shaken up. There were several times where the car stopped and security got out. There were instances where the police confronted the paparazzi and asked them to stop or give them space to do this safely. Unfortunately, that wish was not respected." So that there is a statement from the press secretary for the Sussexes. They are well aware that there will be many that see this simply as a publicity stunt by the Sussexes, who are in the middle of this very heated court battle in the UK. They counter that strongly. They say simply that it was quite clear last night here on the streets of New York that their safety was in danger, but not only their safety, the safety of pedestrians and other drivers here around New York City.
All right, Mark, thank you. Let's bring in our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock, now. Laura, this will be presumably the circumstances of this deeply distressing and emotive, particularly for Prince Harry, and will only add to what's already a very strained relationship with the press.
Yeah, I think it's clear from that statement just how frightening everyone involved found this. But for Harry, not only was he alarmed, but he is angry about this as well. He knows that when he steps out in public, especially with Meghan, their first public outing since the coronation, there'll be a lot of media interest. He didn't expect this, though. He is, of course, someone who has grown up without a mother. She was killed in a car crash while being chased by the paparazzi. His dislike of the media is well documented. Mark was saying in the Netflix series, his memoir, Spare, in the subsequent interviews he gave, he blames the paparazzi for Diana's death and wants to do everything he can to protect his own family, to stop history repeating itself. Those were his words. It is worth pointing out, though, that we have only had the extreme details from the Sussexes. Their statements gave a lot more detail than that of the police. And of course, cynics are saying Harry has a lot of ongoing legal cases, both against the press and the people who decided to take away his personal security. But I think if you take a step back, this shows us just how low Harry has set his personal bar when it comes to how he deals with what he deems to be unwanted and intrusive media behaviour.
Thank you very much. Now, the founder of the gigafactory company Britishvolt has told Sky News that Britain has missed the opportunity to build a battery industry and that the government is to blame. In an exclusive interview, Oral Najari said that we are already behind Asia and Europe. It comes after warnings of further strains on the UK's car industry, as our economics and data editor Ed Conway reports.
The Britishvolt gigafactory was supposed to be the UK's first homegrown battery plant, a levelling up success story fuelled by public money. But when it collapsed into administration earlier this year, the dream, heralded by government ministers, was left in tatters. Now, in his first interview since the implosion, Britishvolt's founder has told Sky News that the government must take much of the blame.
When you think of what might have been, do you feel sad? Do you feel angry?
Devastated. We already are behind East Asia. We're already behind continental Europe. UK, unfortunately, has lost out or is losing out on the gigafactory economy, which is massive in terms of job creation, but unfortunately didn't see that same support from the Conservative government in order to level up the Northeast.
You didn't get the support that you felt you should have got?
Definitely not. At least not from a timing perspective. There was a major rivalry going on between Mr. Johnson and Mr. Sunak at that period of time.
But if you're looking back at the one thing that could have swung it...
I think Britishvolt was collateral damage, stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Between Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak?
The rivalry between 10 and 11, yes.
The concern I think some people within government and many, I imagine, in the public have is just that you were asking for quite a lot of public money, so taxpayers' money, and there are concerns that not all of that money would have been spent in as disciplined a way as they would have liked. Do you think that's fair?
There was no misappropriation of funds because not a single penny was spent on a private jet. 100,000 went to a, as you say, a mansion, but it was a large house. And if you look at the cost of renting a hotel room for that many people during that period of time, it was far more economical to rent a house. The fact that it happened to have a pool that wasn't working for 18 months, by the way, that has nothing to do with it.
A government spokesperson said taxpayer money must always be used responsibly, which is why full due diligence was undertaken before a final grant offer was made. But the allegations come as another car firm, Citroën owner Stellantis, warns it may shut its plants down here because of a lack of battery manufacturing and post-Brexit trading arrangements. Speaking at an event today, the Chancellor said, watch this space. But without these factories, the fate of Britain's car industry is increasingly under question. Ed Conway, Sky News.
Now, for years, experts and governments have warned that it is crucial that global temperatures don't rise by more than 1.5 degrees. Now scientists say that could be reached by 2027. Already, the impacts of this rise in temperature can be felt in weather events around the world. At least 8 people have died in Italy because of heavy rain and flooding, and organisers have cancelled this week's Italian Grand Prix for safety reasons. Sky's climate change and energy correspondent Hannah Thomas-Peter reports.
The Coast Guard rescuing stranded residents in northern Italy. A region coping with deadly and destructive floods. Families and small children trapped by rising waters following days of heavy rain. The situation is so dangerous that Formula One has cancelled the Grand Prix in Imola. Scientists say extreme events like flooding and the ongoing droughts in Spain and France are made more frequent and severe by climate change. It comes as the World Meteorological Association warns for the first time that it's now more likely than not that global temperatures will rise beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius in the next 5 years. It's almost certain, they say, that in the same time period, we will experience the hottest year ever.
The most dramatic changes we expect to happen see in the Arctic, where we have already seen more than double the global warming taking place. And during the coming 5 years, the estimation is that the Arctic temperatures would be 3 times the global averages.
There are two reasons for these predictions. The first is that even though we're already at 1.2 degrees of warming, carbon emissions keep rising. You can see them here. And therefore, so does the heat. Last year, for example, was the 5th warmest on record. The other issue is the likely return of a weather phenomenon known as El Niño, which tends to push warm water up to the surface of the Pacific Ocean, further heating the planet.
The only way to solve the problem, researchers say, is to sharply reduce emissions.
For every year we continue increasing the amount of greenhouse gases we emit. That's 1 year lost. Every tonne of greenhouse gases matters in terms of how bad the extremes are and how different the climate will be.
Going beyond 1.5 may be only temporary this time. But this is a hugely significant moment, a critical threshold, a common goal agreed by the international community, now in real jeopardy. Hannah Thomas-Peter, Sky News.
Now, you might remember that yesterday we brought you the story of the parents unable to afford the soaring prices of baby formula, who say that they have been driven to stealing it and looking for sometimes even dangerous alternatives. Sky News has now spoken to one of the leading brands in the UK, Kendamil, who acknowledged the industry were not doing enough to help struggling families. And now campaigners and one mother are calling for the government to step in. Sky's national correspondent Tom Parmenter has the story.
The price rises have hit hard.
How much is this? 11 quid now?
Some families cannot afford to feed their babies safely, so they're watering down bottles, switching to cow's milk too early, stealing from shops, or buying second-hand tubs online. Kerry's boy Finley is still bottle-fed. She's so furious about what's happening to families that she's petitioning the government for change.
You feel uncomfortable even walking down the baby aisle and looking at the baby milk because the staff instantly think, oh, they're going to nick that. It's like you're treated as a criminal just because you want to go and buy baby milk. Just help, like, lower the costs or provide vouchers for those that work hard for a living.
All of the manufacturers say their production costs have risen sharply. We went to the only formula milk factory in Britain, Kendamil, based in Cumbria. While they've raised their prices, they acknowledge their industry needs to do more for families.
It's been toughest on parents. It's devastating to see, but it is the result of consistent cost-price inflation led by the multinational conglomerates that control this market.
How much responsibility should the industry as a whole take for the positions that British families are finding themselves in at the moment?
We can't ignore the macroeconomic shocks that we've had. Where we would like more transparency is about the enormous price discrepancies between very similar baby formulas on the market.
Do you believe them, the multinationals, when they say that they are doing absolutely everything they can on behalf of families to keep those costs to a minimum?
I mean, I don't think that they are pricing those products as cheap as they could price them for families.
Danone, who make Aptamil and Cow & Gate, say they are freezing the cost of bigger value packs. Nestlé, who make the SMA brands, say they're open to discussing with government what more they can do. The MP charged with investigating infant feeding is horrified by what's happening and is demanding a government review.
I mean, the net effect is children growing up with developmental issues because they haven't had the proper nutrition that they've needed as babies. And that's really quite worrying. That's the kind of thing that you see in countries where there has been famine or malnutrition or war. That should not be happening in the United Kingdom in 2023. I think it's important to see if the government could do something around a ceiling on the cost of infant formula.
Is a price cap realistic in what is a commercial market?
Well, the government allowed this to be a commercial market, and there are times in the past where the government have set limits on the prices of things. There's no reason why one should cost £10 and one should cost £15.
The UK government continues to say that it is helping with the cost of living. But because feeding never stops, parents who are in this struggle can't afford to wait for something to change. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
Well, as the government is facing calls to help with people who are struggling with the cost of living here, the Prime Minister is on his way to Japan for the G7 meeting of world leaders to talk about the global economy, Ukraine, and how to tackle immigration. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, joins us this evening from Downing Street. Evening to you, Sam. Let's talk about that latter point, that issue of immigration, because the Prime Minister is under increasing pressure, isn't he, over the targets that his own government has set.
That's right, Sam. Now, you'll know that most of this year we've been talking about illegal migration, stop the boats. But just this week, it's exploded as an issue when it comes to legal migration. There's a cabinet row. Broadly speaking, you've got Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, on one side, wanting to let more people into work. Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, wanting to keep those numbers low. And so it's against that backdrop that Rishi Sunak, who's on his way to the G7 in Japan, faced really quite uncomfortable questions. He was asked whether or not he still stood by the promise that Boris Johnson, his predecessor, made in the 2019 manifesto, that he'd keep net migration figures lower than the number at that point, which is about 260,000. And Rishi Sunak just said, well, I've inherited some numbers. And that was pretty much it. I think we can take, broadly speaking, that as being him sidestepping the question. In other words, the answer to that question is no, he doesn't think he's going to hit that target. Now, in some ways, that response is somewhat academic, because in the next few days, ministers are expecting net migration of not 250,000, but something more like 750,000. That target's been blown out of the water. No way they're going to meet it. But I think also it speaks to a bigger truth, Sam, which is that all this year, Rishi Sunak has been trying to set his own metrics, his own ways of judging his government, growing the economy, stopping the boat, slashing inflation, keeping down the NHS waiting lists and so on. He wants us to judge him on that. But we are totally within our rights to judge him on the 2019 election manifesto that he stood on alongside Boris Johnson. Those were the promises made to the public when the public last went to the polls. And all of those questions in that manifesto are much, much harder for him to answer. There'll be a lot more sidestepping of those questions to come, I suspect.
All right, Sam, thank you. Now, plans to scrap no-fault evictions in England have been unveiled today. That's as part of a long-promised shake-up of the rental market. It's assumed that that impacts millions of people at one time or another, so there's no surprise that there has been a lot of reaction to that announcement. But although there is some praise for the bill, which has been called a huge opportunity, there are concerns that it will push landlords out of the market, as our political correspondent Liz Bates reports.
For England's 11 million renters, life can be difficult.
I've been forced to move 3 times since the start of the pandemic through a combination of no-fault evictions, so like Section 21s, and rent rises.
Now, a change in the law is coming that the government says will help people like Jasmine by ending no-fault evictions.
I feel like more needs to be done. I feel like the bill doesn't go far enough. I say that because the way that I've been forced out each time is, it may have come with a Section 21 notice, but in the end, you know, I've been advised there's no point in fighting your Section 21 notice if you can't afford to pay the rent increase.
Housing Secretary Michael Gove has insisted he is on the side of renters, and the plans will give more powers to people like Belinda, who says her landlord has repeatedly refused to fix mould and leaks and threatened her with eviction.
The good news is that even at a time when people are facing real pressure on their household budgets, that rents in the private rented sector have risen less than inflation. And of course, in this legislation, we affirm that rents can only rise once a year. And if rents are thought to be unfair, there's an ombudsman now that we're creating.
The bill will also give landlords new powers to evict tenants that are antisocial or behind on their rent. It will bring in new standards that force landlords to keep their properties safe and well maintained, and it will end blanket bans on people on benefits or with children. But some critics, including Conservative MPs, say it will drive landlords out of the sector.
He was given 2 keys, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 front door keys.
Lisa has experienced a problem tenant and has used a no-fault eviction.
When he didn't pay his rent, I issued the Section 21. which I'm very glad I did. But he didn't go out on the date he was. He lived there rent-free for 6 months.
But when she found out this law change was coming, she felt she had no choice but to sell.
It really does force your hand, and I decided to sell. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be quite a few landlords doing the same thing and selling.
Housing campaigners have called the legislation a huge opportunity. But with house building targets scrapped and rising interest rates, will it be enough to fix the crumbling foundations of Britain's rental market? Liz Bates, Sky News, North London.
Now, a senior Metropolitan Police officer has denied the force was under political pressure to stop all anti-monarchy protesters at the coronation. Temporary Assistant Commissioner Matt Twist appeared before MPs this morning. It was following criticism of the way officers handled demonstrations. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt reports.
Protesting is now a crime in 2023.
Police suspected the anti-monarchists were planning disruption. In their van, they found luggage straps and locks for carrying heavy placards, said the protesters. Their leader, Graham Smith, said months of liaising with police on the day counted for nothing.
Immediately, we were surrounded by large numbers of tactical support group officers who were not in remotely friendly or helpful mindset. We never had any intention of doing anything which even came close to falling outside of the law. And the claim that they had intelligence could not possibly be true. Either they're being dishonest or they are making a very serious error.
Come on, officer, do your job. Come on, officer. No, we're not having this.
The MP's session was interrupted briefly, perhaps to little surprise, by a protester.
To be clear, they were just Stop Oil protesters who tried to undermine the activities of this committee with our witnesses today.
3 days before the coronation, Parliament had given police tough new powers to search and arrest to prevent public protest turning into disruption. Had the police overreacted?
I felt under no pressure politically. I felt pressure to deliver a safe and secure operation, but that was because of the fact it was a once-in-a-lifetime event for so many people, and we are continually balancing the rights of those who seek to protest with those who are impacted by it.
The officer said police action had to be seen in context. Late intelligence had warned of paint sprayers, invaders along the route, and rape alarms to scare horses. A volunteer handing out rape alarms was arrested with colleagues.
We did the best that we could to try and explain who we were to the officers.
I'm a bit speechless, actually, having heard that account of what happened to you, your colleagues.
During the day, 52 protesters were arrested. There was tension and rival chanting, but no disruption to the coronation.
Because we're lowering the threshold for what isn't allowed in our society to disruptive, it's going to lead to lots more police involvement. It's going to be a lot more encounters with the police. But that is undoubtedly, in my view, going to radicalise groups of protesters.
The evidence gathered by MPs is expected to be considered in their report this summer on policing priorities. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Westminster.
The Armed Forces Minister has refused to rule out defence spending cuts ahead of the publication of a review into the UK's defence capabilities expected next month. James Heapy was speaking to Sky News' Sophie Rich.
The world has become ever more insecure and ever more unstable, and so we need to make sure that we are gearing ourselves against all of those threats. I mean, I'm not ruling cuts out, I'm not ruling increases out.
Brentford striker Ivan Toney has been suspended from all football for 8 months and fined £50,000. That's after breaking FA betting rules. The England international admitted 232 breaches between February 2017 and January 2021. The sanctions mean that the 27-year-old won't be available to play again until January next year, although he will be allowed to return to training this September.